Hello. How's everybody doing tonight? I am definitely comforting myself tonight with my crystals. I decided to use Angelite to help me through some conversations. So I wanted to talk a bit about sharing my story. You know, it's been about a month since I've been doing this, publicly sharing my story. And while it is extremely healing and liberating, at times it can be very triggering. You know, even most times when I go live, I dissociate. And that's part of my CPTSD, but you know, tonight I just wanted to be able to try to find comfort in what I'm speaking about through my crystals. So that's what I'm going to do tonight. And while I've been sharing my story, you know, I recognize that it's topics that people have a hard time talking about or like wanting to listen to, or even like recognize. People have a hard time really just accepting that this is something that someone talks about. And while I've been getting really great support, I also get negative feedback. So for instance, you know, usually what I do is I go live on Instagram and Facebook at the same time, and you know, I'll upload my Instagram live videos to my phone and put that on YouTube, and then I will put that on my podcast, and it is quite humorous to see some of the comments when I post them publicly. So like on my Instagram and my Facebook, well, my Facebook is more like people I know or people who have known me. Maybe they don't know me now, but they knew me then. So that's like what my Facebook consists of. And my Instagram is more public. So, you know, anybody could follow my Instagram pages. And then I created a TikTok, and so, you know, that's public. Anybody can follow me on that. And then my podcast, anybody can listen to that. Anybody can listen to YouTube. So what's been happening, you know, this past month, I would say like the first couple of weeks was just all positive feedback. And then the more that I got into some details, yeah, that's when the negativity started. And it's definitely been interesting just reading some comments. Yeah. For instance, my TikTok, like I said, like I'll make reels and post them on my Instagram, and then I'll use those reels and put them on as my TikToks as well. And TikTok actually banned me, which is new. I was in my support group today and I was like, wait, I am getting on next level right now. Like, people care to the point that they're banning me, you know, they're reporting me. And it's just so interesting to see that what you're allowed to talk about and then what you're not allowed to talk about. You know, like there's all of these songs out there that are, even when you're making reels, you know, like you want those attention grabbing songs that everybody's wanting to use right now, because that's like what will get the word out there. So I'm listening to these songs and I'm like, does anybody even hear what these songs are saying? There's this one trend on Reels and TikTok right now where it's like some trend where like you walk in the camera and you change your outfit. If you guys know what I'm talking about, do you know what they're saying in the song? Because it is horrifying what they're actually saying in the song. It's like, I don't even want to repeat it. That's how bad it is. And it is absolutely promoting sexual violence. But then here I am talking about how I'm being sexually assaulted, or how I was being sexually assaulted, and how I've experienced sexual violence, and TikTok's banning me. So yeah, TikTok banned me because I posted a video that was me explaining, I mean, it's still on Instagram, so you can see it, but it's a reel of me talking about how my children's father was sexually assaulting me. Like my third child, like how he was conceived. And yeah, they banned me because I was posting statistics on there about how unfortunately common sexual assault is. And then in the background, it's me talking about how I've been sexually assaulted. And TikTok is claiming that my video is promoting harassment, like towards the abuser, which is like extremely contradictory and hypocritical. Like, it makes no sense. And then also TikTok, so I guess people have been reporting that video. So that's why it was brought to TikTok's attention, and then they deleted the video for community guideline violations, and then they banned me for like a week. So I'm not allowed to like post anything on TikTok. And then I appealed it, and I'll see if that goes away soon, hopefully. But yeah, they don't want me speaking about sexual assault, but they promote videos that are people doing those viral reels and TikToks of them walking in the camera, and the singer is promoting sexual violence. So it makes no sense whatsoever. A video that was also reported was my video of me as like a young kid, like a little baby, moving into then an 8-year-old, a 10-year-old, a 13-year-old, like in high school, with all the names of emotional abuse that people would say to me. And that one was banned for minor safety because they said that it was like grooming, which makes no sense because here I am, promoting awareness on sexual assault and sexual violence. And that's like not at all what that video was about. That video was about emotional abuse and what I experienced. So maybe it's what other people are experiencing, so I'm spreading awareness. So it's just so interesting to see that that's how TikTok is handling it. But yeah, so I mean, in my support group, they were talking about how, unfortunately, when you're talking about these subjects, you have to kind of say it without saying it so that you can keep doing what you're doing. So some people who are doing similar things like me say like SA, instead of saying sexual assault. But that I'm not doing that. And I'm not doing that because I've been silenced my whole life. And that's just another way for people to silence me. So like TikTok is like, oh, you can't do this. So I'm going to keep doing it. So, and then, yeah, I got some comments on YouTube this morning. This all happened this morning, but this morning on YouTube, it was like, I know this said boyfriend, and none of that is true. And I was like, what? Okay. Because, I didn't reply. There's no sense in replying to these things, but it's just comical to me because it's like, you can literally, he's a convicted felon. Like, you can literally search it yourself if you really want to. And he admitted the guilt. You know, I did not get the justice that I deserve. And he definitely got like a deal. But he's a convicted felon. So originally he was charged with multiple felonies, and he was only convicted of 2. The felonies were so many, I think between like 15 and 18 felonies is what he was originally charged with. But COVID kind of made things 10 times more complicated, and the courts used that as like leeway. Because like I mentioned in a couple of my other lives, is the courts are not there to get you justice. They're not. They're just in it for the win. And the justice system makes no sense, and it's so backwards. But really all they care about in prosecution is like, do we have a case that's going to win? And if they don't have a case that's going to win, they're like, we don't really have enough here. Even though they know it happened and they have the evidence, they're like, is this going to get us a win? Like, I don't know why the justice system is based off of like other people's opinions, but that's basically what the justice system is, you know, up to a judge and what their opinion is and what they think, or it's up to a jury of like random people and their opinion and what they think. So how does that make any sense when we know what happened, you know, but ultimately it's up to somebody else's opinion to justify, okay, yeah, this happened, or we think this happened, and so then they're guilty. So that doesn't make any sense to me. But yeah, because of COVID, the courts were saying, oh, well, it's going to be really hard to get a jury because his charges were so intense. Like I said, he was convicted of strangulation and suffocation, aggravated assault on a pregnant victim. I was 10 weeks pregnant when it happened. And this wasn't the first altercation. This was just the first time police were involved. And I had an active restraining order that I amended into a no abuse order, which I said in my last live, like, makes no sense. It's like, yeah, you can't abuse me, you know? Like, you need to get a piece of paper to say that. When it's like, nobody should abuse anybody, but let's get a piece of paper that says he can't abuse me. But thankfully, I still had that. So he was even in more trouble because he violated the order and abused me. So he was convicted of those 3 things. But they were saying, since he was being charged with multiple different felonies, it was so serious that he needed to be indicted. And being indicted means like he was at like a county level. And they wanted it to be at like a superior court level where he would go to like a state prison. Instead of going to like a county jail. So everything was in the works for him to be indicted and for this to be taken seriously like it should have been. And then they're like, well, COVID. And I'm like, that's not my problem. There's COVID, you know. This is a pandemic, and nobody understands what we're doing in this pandemic. Like, all of us are confused, but yet he still is a felon. Like, he still did these things. So just because COVID happened doesn't mean like he gets a pass. And that's basically what the court was telling me, is like, well, we don't have enough people to get the grand jury. Like, we don't have enough people, and we can't get the people to come in during COVID. So, you know, he's going to take a plea deal. And I'm like, how is that fair? That's not fair. That is not fair. You know, and the way society works is like every defendant is allowed to get a plea deal. No matter how serious things are, like, they get a lawyer and they take a plea deal. So ultimately that's what ended up happening, even though they told me that he was going to be indicted and all this stuff was going to happen. And, you know, obviously none of that happened. So he took a plea deal and served about 10 months at the county jail. And, you know, he would brag about this stuff because at one point he was arrested when everything happened. My neighbor called the police and he was arrested. But he ended up getting a lawyer and he got out in like 3 weeks. So he served like 3 weeks in the county jail and before he got let out. And when he got released, like the first thing he did was communicate with me. I communicated back and we communicated for like 4 months, maybe like 4 months. When legally he was not supposed to be contacting me or anything, and I was still heavily in the cycle that I was talking to him too. I was in the complete opposite place of where I am today. So, but in February of 2020, ironically Valentine's Day, I was like, why am I doing this to myself? He is still abusing me. He was still sexually abusing me. He was still heavily abusing me. And I had just about had it because I think on February 14th of 2020, we had court. And I remember him having a conversation with me being like, I don't even know what he said. Something about like, I'm going to admit guilt. Like, I'm going to admit guilt. And then at court, he did the complete opposite. And he was like, I'm not guilty. So then they were getting ready for like, I don't know, the beginning stage of the trial. But he basically like went back on his word and didn't do what he said he was going to do, which was he was going to admit guilt. And then that ended up not happening. So I was pretty upset with him, you know. Meanwhile, we're like talking. But yeah, I was pretty upset. But he ends up messaging me like as soon as I left the courthouse being like, you want to come over? Like, my mom's not going to be home. You want to hang out? Like, he basically just like wanted to have intercourse with me. And I'm like, were you not at the same courthouse? Like, did we not just experience the same thing? Like, you told me that you know what you did and you want to admit guilt in open court, and now you want to say you're not guilty, so I'm confused here. And now you just want me to come over and have your way with me? Like, I'm confused here. And meanwhile, at that time, I was like pretty heavily pregnant. I don't even know, but I was definitely like showing. It was my third, but you know, still. But I was born with my anatomy. Like, I was born with the anatomy where like I cannot have intercourse during pregnancy. Most women in healthy pregnancies can have intercourse, but the way I was born, I cannot have intercourse. So when I was first pregnant with my son, who's 5 now, I was about 5 or 6 weeks when I found out. They specifically said at my first ultrasound, you cannot have intercourse. And he was there at that appointment. You cannot have intercourse. It would be jeopardizing the safety of your child if you have intercourse. The doctors explained this to him. The nurses explained this to him. And he was like, I understand. And then we would like leave that doctor's appointment and he would, all he wanted to do was have intercourse with me. So, yeah. And then he continued to have intercourse with me regularly, sometimes like 4 times a day, to the point that with my first son, I was dilating at 20 weeks. All of the times that this happened, it was all sexual assaults, where I explained in a couple of my other lives, like I would fawn. Like, fawning was like what I would do, which is basically like people pleasing, appeasing, just kind of doing like whatever, you know. And I was doing that because he was also physically abusive to me. So I was almost picking which abuse I would rather deal with. So do I want him physically assaulting me, or do I want him to like hurry up and do that and then fall asleep and then I'm safe, you know? Even though obviously I was not safe during, before, or after, but for me, that was like what my brain was telling me to do. And then I would fawn, and then as it was happening, I would freeze and just kind of like lay there. So yeah, I end up going into labor at like 22 weeks. I got rushed into the hospital. I was at Norwood. They didn't have a NICU to support the baby to be born. So I had to be ambulanced over to Boston. And I went to Boston, and they were like, you're a centimeter dilated at 22 weeks. Like, and then I was 3 centimeters dilated, and then I was bleeding, and it was bad. So then they gave me like a bunch of steroids and things, and eventually I was able to leave the hospital after like a couple days. And but I was on like strict bed rest. And you know, I came home and he was obviously sexually assaulting me still. So it just got worse. And then I'm about like 26 weeks now. And I come in, I'm bleeding heavily. I got to Norwood. They ambulanced me over to Boston again. And I'm now, 26 weeks pregnant. And I was in like active labor. And they were like, this is serious. Like, you're having a baby. And they brought in all the doctors. They brought in like NICU. Hi Abe. They brought in NICU. Like, they were like preparing for this baby to be born. And all I could do was like pray to God. I'm like, God, this baby cannot come right now. Like, I know this baby is not coming right now. And that's all I focused on, was like, this baby needs to stay in longer. So, and this is my 5-year-old now. And, so for my safety, they all knew what was happening to me. I didn't know what was happening to me, but they all knew what was happening to me. And thankfully they took amazing notes. So they wrote everything down of what they witnessed when he was there, like what was being done to me every time I went into the hospital. Like, they knew what was going on. And so for my safety, I had to live at the hospital. I had to live in Boston at the hospital for my safety, for weeks. I think like 10 weeks. It was a long time. I was on bed rest. I literally like did Sudoku puzzles. I watched like shows. I think I like watched like every episode of like Friends and like Law and Order SVU, from like the very beginning. But yeah, he ends up getting trespassed from the hospital. Like, he would abuse me at the hospital. It was intense. But thankfully, the doctors and nurses helped so much that my son wasn't born until, he was still born premature, but he wasn't born until 36 weeks, which is amazing because I was dilating at like 22 weeks. So the fact that they kept him in there that long is like amazing. But yeah, so that's just like a little glimpse of what I experienced. But anyway, back to like the justice system. He is basically like able to do what he wants to a certain extent. And he's not, like, he's a convicted felon, but he really got a deal. He got a deal. And it's just not okay. Part of me sharing my story is so that others can understand that this isn't okay. Like, others can understand, like, okay, this is happening to me, you know, because I didn't know this was happening to me for the longest time. I genuinely thought that what him and I had was love, because like I mentioned, like, that is what I was exposed to growing up. So I genuinely thought that this person loves me and I love them. I saw my mom and dad, and I was taught at a young age, like, you don't ever leave. You never leave. Like, this is what a family is. You have a mom, you have a dad, and you have your siblings. I was also taught that families are only full siblings. I was taught that, like, it's not okay to have other parents, you know, like, if you know, you leave if you leave, like, your husband or something, and then you have another child, like, that was not okay. Blended families is something that was not okay in my family. That's what I was taught. So thankfully, now that I'm out of it, I'm now recognizing that none of that is right. You know, like, meanwhile, me, you know, I'm experiencing this now. Like, I'm one parent and I have 3 kids. The looks I get from some people, they might have the same mindset that I had growing up, where it was like, some people just automatically assume. Like, I go to the grocery store and they're like, oh, they all look so much like you. I don't know what your husband looks like, but... And I'm like, nope, just me. Or, like, I go out to a restaurant and they're like, is this all? I'm like, this is my family. Like, just me. Like, the looks I get, it's quite hysterical. Like, I just went to a carnival and the looks on people's faces are like, wait, you're you and you have 3 kids. You know, they're 5, 2, and 1. And it happened more when I was pregnant with my third, because I was pregnant. So they were like, even more of like, oh, your husband. I'm like, nope, no husband. And then when he was born, my third was born, it was like, people would just assume, even in my neighborhood, even though my neighborhood, like, knew what happened to me, some who didn't, you know, were like, oh, congratulations to you and your husband. And I'm like, nope, just me. After a while, it was like, should I wear a sign? So I'm now understanding that it's okay to, like, diversity is okay. Like, I am part of that. Like, I am one parent and I have 3 kids, and that's fine. That's okay. You know, plus, like, half these people who said something to me, like, they have no idea. And that's just, like, what they were taught and what they're saying. So, but, you know, what if, for instance, like, with me, it's like, okay, I have, like, a very abusive children's father. So, but, like, what if my husband passed away and you're saying that to someone? So it's just, if anything, it taught me to, like, really think. And I think it would also get them to think, when I was like, nope, just me. They were like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm like, oh, it's fine. You didn't know? You know? But yeah, I'm now realizing, like, if you have a half sibling, that's okay. Like, if you get divorced, or, like, someone passes away and you're just who you are, like, it's just you raising, like, that's okay. You know? It's like, if you, like, it's okay. It's all right. You know? But the way I was taught is like, no, you don't ever do that. So, because my parents never left one another, even though they would have conversations of like, oh, they despise one another, and like, there was always talk about someone needs to leave someone, and no, you can't do that. You have to stay. Even though there was like intense abuse, you have to stay. So that's what happened with me. I was like, oh, I stay with my children's father. Like, he abused me horribly for years, but I stay with him. That is my children's father. And I remember even like saying, like, this is our family. Like, the mom and the dad, like, need to be together for the children. Like, this is like, you know, like, you can't just like go off and go have another family. Like, I can't just go off and go have another family. And I remember some people would be like, it's okay to leave him, D'Angela. Like, it's okay to leave him. I remember, like, one of my friends who's, you know, not in my life anymore because of the abuse, you know. Unfortunately, that's what happens when you're in abusive relationships. Some people want to point out what's happening to you, and you don't want to believe it. And that person's like, for the safety of me and my children, like, we can't hang out with you anymore. And it stunk, but it was reality. It was like, I understand, I respect that, you know. Some people have rekindled relationships with me now because they see, okay, wait, she's left. Like, she's on a different path now. But others, they don't want to because they're like, you know, and that's their own choice. But it's definitely hard because you feel alone, and you feel like, for me, like, I felt like, oh, I'm an idiot. Like, I'm dumb, you know. Plus, like, that's how my family spoke to me. So I was like, why didn't I leave? You know, and I lost some great friends. But yeah, so I could keep talking about this for so long. There's just so much I want to say. But thank you for all the support. Everyone's been sending like such great comments on here. And yeah, hopefully TikTok brings back my account. I mean, it's still there. Like, you can still find my TikTok account. It's just I can't post. So hopefully they'll let me post soon. But I'm not going to be quiet. I'm going to keep talking. So nobody's going to silence me anymore. Like, I might have been abused and I have a ton of trauma, but like, nobody's ever going to take my voice from me. And I'm going to talk about these things because I want to help people. I want to help me, and I want to help people. And some people might be living these experiences and maybe notice a little bit, but don't know how to get out, or, you know, don't even know where to begin, or think something's uncomfortable and they're like, oh, I didn't know this happened to me. I didn't know this is happening to me. And maybe I'm touching someone's heart as I'm speaking. Or maybe I'm informing some people who might not know otherwise. So, but if anything, I'm healing myself. And we can all heal ourselves. You know, we have that capability. So, yeah. So I'm going to head out, guys. But thank you so much for listening. And thank you for your support. And I'm going to keep going. No one's stopping me. All right. Take care, guys. Bye.